The leather chair creaked softly as Donald Trump leaned back, his eyes fixed on the television mounted above the fireplace in the Oval Office. The news ticker at the bottom of the screen hadn't changed in over half an hour. Federal judge blocks deportation order. Trump administration in contempt. Outside, cameras buzzed and reporters scrambled, but inside the room, there was only silence and calculation. Across the room, Press Secretary Carolyn Driscoll stood near the doorway, clutching her iPad like a shield. She had seen this silence before. It wasn't hesitation. It was ignition. James Boasberg, Trump finally said, his voice flat but sharp, slicing the air. He thinks he's running the country now. Carolyn stepped forward cautiously. Judge Boasberg's ruling cites the Alien Enemies Act of 1798. I know what it cites. Trump cut in, not raising his voice, but making it clear. He found the dustiest statute he could wrap in outrage and called it justice. On the coffee table in front of him lay a thick binder. Immigration maps, court transcripts, pages slashed in red ink. Trump stared down at it. They're daring me to act out, so they can scream dictator for the next 5 weeks. The decision was made not with drama, but with resolve. He wouldn't send a tweet. He wouldn't hold a press conference. He was going to walk straight into the Supreme Court. And when he did, he wouldn't be looking for a ruling. He'd be demanding an answer from the highest judge in the land. Face to face, live, before the nation. The mood in the West Wing had shifted. What had started as a legal hiccup was now snowballing into a constitutional standoff. Pam Bondi stepped into the room. Dark navy suit, no jewelry, just a notepad and the look of a seasoned warrior. It's not just El Paso anymore, she said. Boston's ruling just grounded flights out of Tucson, Phoenix, and Brownsville. ICE is scrambling. Trump didn't flinch. We're enforcing immigration law, and they're calling it a constitutional crisis. Pam flipped through her notes. It's more than that now. Boasberg's wording accused the administration of acting in bad faith. He made it public. It's not legal anymore. It's political. Silence hung in the room like fog. Trump turned toward the bulletproof windows. Outside, the press corps was setting up like it was just another D.C. day. They had no idea what was coming. Contempt, he murmured. They used to say that when I tweeted. Now, they say it when I secure the border. Carolyn's voice broke the silence. Media's already circling. If we don't speak, they'll write the story for us. Trump didn't turn around. Good, he said. Let them write. He walked over to his desk, opened the drawer, and pulled out a folded copy of Boasberg's order. He held it like evidence, like a weapon. Let's see if they still believe in transparency when the lights are on and the cameras are rolling. Pam inhaled sharply. You're calling them out live? Trump's voice hardened. Every last one of them, starting with John Roberts. Carolyn looked up from her iPad, nervous. You'll be accused of politicizing the bench. I'm not politicizing it, Trump said. I'm exposing it. His eyes swept across the room. The American people didn't vote for judges in robes. They voted for a president. And I'm not going to let this government become a courtroom monarchy while they pretend they're defending democracy. Pam nodded slowly. Then we'd better prepare. Because this won't be a press conference. No, Trump said, closing the folder. This is going to be a reckoning. And we're doing it in their house. It wasn't a press release. It wasn't a leak to the media whispered behind closed doors. At 9:03 a.m., a simple PDF was uploaded to the Supreme Court's official website. No signature, no press conference, just one clean statement stamped from the office of the president. By 9:07, the Capitol was on fire. CNN labeled it an unprecedented challenge to judicial independence. Fox News went with Trump calls out the bench directly. MSNBC called it stunt. But none of them could look away. In court chambers, in newsrooms, in cafes from Boston to Bakersfield, every screen lit up with one name, John G. Roberts. In the West Wing, Pam Bondi read the Chief Justice's response aloud. Impeachment is not an appropriate reaction to a legal disagreement with a judge. The judiciary must remain independent, even when its rulings are unpopular. She paused. The paper shook slightly in her hand. This isn't a defense, she whispered. It's a warning. Downstairs, in the Roosevelt room, Trump didn't blink. Senator Felix Morton and DHS Deputy Carl Higdon were seated with him, eyes narrowed, hands clenched. "He's posturing," Morton said, trying to look like the grown-up in the room. Trump placed his coffee down slowly. "Sacred ground," he repeated. "They've turned it into a battlefield." Carl leaned forward. Boasberg's ruling wasn't review. It was sabotage. They're blocking policy before it even lands. Trump stood, that slow, deliberate kind of rising that made people instinctively straighten their backs. "They want to play by tradition," he said. "Fine. Let's test that tradition." Pam entered, handed him the printout. He didn't even glance at it. "I know what Robert sounds like. He doesn't yell. He buries you in eternal sentences." Carolyn joined, tapping her screen. Media's calling his response measured. Trump scoffed. "They're defending robes, not people. They want judges to have veto power over presidents." He walked slowly to the fireplace, the same spot Roosevelt once stood. "We gave them years to fix this. They gave us panels and speeches." He turned to the room, no longer speaking to staff, but to soldiers. "They want court rulings? We'll give them courtroom cameras." The idea started as a whisper. By sundown, it had become a movement. The team moved fast, faster than Washington was used to. By 5 p.m., the architect of the Capitol had already sent in engineers to assess the Supreme Court chamber. By 7 o'clock, lighting rigs were being lowered in from above. 2 lecterns were installed, one bearing the seal of the United States Supreme Court, the other the golden crest of the presidency. This wasn't just a press event. This was a constitutional confrontation designed for cameras. Carolyn's fingers flew across her iPad. "We got over 200 media credential requests already, BBC, Al Jazeera, even NHK from Japan. It's international." Pam Bondi reviewed the updated security plan. "We'll need full deployment, federal marshals, Capitol Police, Secret Service. Not for protection, for order. This isn't politics anymore. This is national spectacle." In a quiet corner of the White House, Trump sat reviewing a single sheet of paper, the original copy of Boasberg's injunction. He didn't highlight it. He didn't mark it. He just stared at the words. "They think robes make them untouchable," he said, mostly to himself. Just then, Felix Morton walked in holding a folded document. Roberts just replied. He's agreed to attend. He's bringing 3 justices. No remarks. He wants to speak off script. Trump didn't smile. He nodded once. Perfect. The more unfiltered, the better. Carolyn looked up from her screen. "What's the goal, Mr. President?" He stood slowly, folding the paper with care. "To break the illusion." Pam raised an eyebrow. "What illusion?" "That silence equals justice," Trump said. "That formality makes you right. The people need to see them, not as symbols, but as human. Flawed, political, and sometimes wrong. And if they flip it back on you?" Pam asked, "If they say you're the tyrant?" He didn't hesitate. "Let them. The difference is, I answer to the people. They answer to no one." The room went quiet. And just like that, the stage wasn't just set. It was primed for reckoning. At exactly 10:52 a.m., the marble steps of the Supreme Court trembled, not from sound but from silence. Outside, protesters filled both sides of the plaza. Some held signs reading, "Let the people govern." Others stood firm for judicial independence. But inside was different. Inside was history. The chamber had been transformed. Where arguments were once whispered behind ornate columns, now stood 2 opposing podiums. The room was lit not just by chandeliers, but by rigged studio lights. Reporters filled the rear seats. Camera lenses pointed like weapons. Red tally lights blinked. Live. Every second. No one breathed when 11 o'clock struck. From the East Corridor, the door opened, and Donald J. Trump walked in. No smile. No wave. Just a leather folder tucked beneath one arm, and a stare that didn't shift. He walked to his lectern with the precision of someone who'd entered 100 rooms just like this. But this wasn't just another room. This was the Supreme Court of the United States. Across from him, Chief Justice John G. Roberts sat at the head of the judicial bench, flanked by Justices Young, Salazar, and Ketanji Brown Jackson. Roberts' hands were clasped, his face unreadable. Calm, still, regal. Like always, the press camera shutters began clicking, staccato and sharp, like distant gunfire. Then, silence again. Trump scanned the chamber once. No cue cards, no staffers, no polished speech. And then, he spoke. When I swore to defend this country, I didn't expect to stand in this room. Not facing enemies abroad, but silence, cloaked in robes. The words echoed, cold and clean. We enforced the law, and we were accused of bad faith. He reached into the folder, pulled out Judge Boasberg's injunction, held it high. This is not law. This is leverage. Across the bench, Roberts didn't move, but his jaw tightened just barely. The room was no longer a courtroom. It was a stage, and the country was watching. The room didn't creak. It didn't move, but you could feel the temperature shift. Trump stood firm at his lectern, holding Boasberg's order like a courtroom exhibit. This isn't oversight. It's obstruction, he said, his voice steady, measured but burning. One judge, one signature, and an entire border operation was shut down in less time than it took to type the order's file name. He let that sink in. No flair, no yelling, just facts delivered with surgical precision. We're told to appeal, to wait, to trust the process. But how long should the American people wait? When their votes are reversed with PDFs. Then, he pulled out the second document, the Declaration of Independence. Not a printout, a parchment replica, aged and folded like something sacred. This country wasn't built for 700 unelected lawyers to decide what the people can or cannot have. This document didn't create kings, it dismantled them. His words echoed off marble walls. The chamber, for a heartbeat, became a cathedral. And yet, here we are, watching unelected judges veto elected leadership. Not because the law changed, but because they disagree. He turned, now not just addressing the bench, but Chief Justice Roberts directly. Chief Justice, I say this with all the respect your title commands, but none for what it's become. Roberts didn't blink, but his stillness was no longer tranquil. It was tense. When the people cry out for action and the courts respond with silence. That is not neutrality. That is surrender. From the bench, Roberts slowly leaned forward. Calm as always. Mr. President, he said, courts exist not to reflect passion, but to temper it. We don't chase politics. We check power. Trump didn't interrupt. He let Roberts finish. That was part of it. The contrast. Then Trump stepped forward just one pace. Then why? He asked. Does it feel like the court only checks one side? The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was seismic. He unfolded the declaration again, this time reading from a quote, handwritten on its reverse side. An oligarchy in robes is still an oligarchy. Gasps didn't follow. No shouts, no cheers, just realization. This wasn't a speech. It was an accusation. He dropped Boasberg's injunction onto the courtroom floor. The sound it made was soft but final. A paper, a challenge, a line in marble. He didn't look back at it. They call it judicial review, he said. I call it judicial rule. And for the first time in years, the country saw its court not as sacred, but as human, fallible, political, confronted. Chief Justice John Roberts didn't speak right away. His fingers remained lightly interlaced on the desk before him, a picture of restraint. But behind the polished demeanor, there was movement, a twitch at the corner of the mouth, the slight narrowing of his eyes. This was not the Roberts Americans had grown used to seeing, aloof, judicial, above the fray. This was the man behind the robe. Finally, he leaned forward, just enough to be seen. Mr. President, he began, his tone precise, clipped like a scalpel. This court is not here to shield itself from accountability, but neither will it be baited into a theater. He paused. No one breathed. You speak of obstruction. We speak of balance. You raise a document that sparked revolution, but forget it was followed by a constitution that tempered it. His eyes now locked with Trump's. The judiciary is not the threat to the republic, Mr. President. It is the safeguard. Trump didn't speak. He crossed his arms. You may not like what we rule, Roberts continued, but the strength of our system has always been that no man, no office, rules unchallenged. He picked up the fallen injunction, looked at it, then placed it gently on the desk. This wasn't signed to challenge democracy. It was signed to uphold it. Across the room, Carolyn glanced nervously at Pam, who stood still, lips tight, watching it unfold like a war with no bullets. Trump took one slow breath, then stepped forward again, voice lower but more pointed. "Then why does it feel," he asked, "like only one side ever gets challenged?" A beat of silence. "Why is it," he continued, "that rulings against executive authority are called courage, but when a president speaks back, it's called tyranny?" Roberts didn't flinch. "Because courts are not elected to win favor," he replied. "They're structured to resist it." Trump pulled out one final sheet of paper. On it, handwritten in thick black ink, underlined twice, were just 12 words. "Power without accountability is not justice. It's theft." He held it up for all to see. "And that," he said, "is what this system has become." He let the paper fall beside the other. 2 pages, 2 ideologies, on the same courtroom floor. One for tradition, one for confrontation. The nation watching didn't see just a legal disagreement anymore. They saw a clash of doctrines, each claiming to defend democracy. But only one could win. Outside the chamber, it began with whispers. Then the whispers became chatter. Then the chatter became a storm. As Trump stepped down from the podium, the justices remained seated, silent, motionless, like statues watching history reshape the marble around them. But beyond those walls, America was already moving. In a barbershop in Jackson, Mississippi, Marine veteran Corey Bell stood frozen, eyes locked on the screen mounted in the corner. When the clip ended, he turned to the others. "That's what I've been trying to say for years." Somebody finally said it out loud. In Flagstaff, Arizona, Marlene Cross, 62, sat alone in her living room. She hadn't voted in 2 elections. Not because she didn't care, but because she thought her voice didn't matter anymore. That morning it did. She replayed the moment where Trump dropped the order on the courtroom floor. Then the words, "They don't want a bench, they want a throne." Her hand trembled as she clicked share. In Yuma, Arizona, a high school civics teacher printed the quote from Trump's closing. "We're going to dismantle it, legally, constitutionally, but completely." She passed the printout to her students and asked one question. "What does that mean to you?" A boy in the back raised his hand. "That the rules don't protect you if they only protect themselves." By 6 p.m., talk radio stations across the country had shifted tone. No longer about party, not even about policy, but about power and who holds it when no one's watching. On social media, hashtags surged. Hashtag bench versus ballot. Hashtag court takeover. Hashtag oligarchy in robes. But the post that went most viral wasn't from politician or pundit. It was from Elon Musk, seated in the back corner of the Supreme Court that day, phone in hand. He had stood through the entire summit, saying nothing, until he typed. A courtroom just became a battlefield. That tweet passed 2 million views in under an hour. By nightfall, people weren't asking whether Trump had gone too far. They were asking why no one else had gone there sooner. It wasn't about Roberts anymore. It wasn't even about Trump. It was about a question that had haunted a generation of voters in silence. If judges can overrule presidents, and they answer to no one, is that still democracy? In homes, classrooms, diners, and sidewalks, the silence cracked. And in that crack, something awakened. At 8:02 a.m. the next morning, Pam Bondi stepped into the Oval Office, a stack of red folders in her arms, her expression unreadable. "Mr. President," she said, "the reaction is louder than we thought." Trump sat calmly at the resolute desk, coffee in hand, flipping through yesterday's remarks. He didn't look up. "Good," he said. "That means they heard it." Right behind her, Carolyn Driscoll entered, holding her iPad like it might combust. "We've had 19 members of Congress reach out overnight. 7 senators. They want to draft legislation. Immediate reform of nationwide injunction powers." Trump finally looked up. "Give a name," he said. "People don't rally around complexity." Pam nodded. She flipped open a folder. "We're calling it the Judicial Accountability Act. Tighter standards for emergency rulings. Mandatory reviews for federal injunctions. Real-time publication of judicial orders that block executive action. Perfect, Trump replied. Let the courts answer to someone besides themselves. At 12:04 p.m., Senator Felix Morton stood on the steps of the Capitol flanked by a bipartisan group of lawmakers. Microphones bristled like antennae. This bill is not about one party or one case, Morton said. It's about restoring the balance of power. The people deserve to see what's stopping their vote from becoming law. But even before the bill made headlines, Elon Musk had already moved. From his X, formerly Twitter, account, he posted a short announcement. Launching today, CourtLight, a real-time transparency tracker for every federal judge in America. You should know who's shaping your life from behind the bench. The app went live at 2:16 p.m. Within the first hour, over 1 million downloads. By nightfall, 5 million. Dots began lighting up across the U.S. map, each one representing a federal ruling currently in effect that blocked or altered an executive order. Clicking the dot revealed the judge's name, the case summary, a timeline, a public comment section. It was part database, part scoreboard, part revolt. For the first time, Americans weren't guessing who was behind the curtain. They could see them and rate them. On cable news, legal analysts scrambled to interpret. Some praised the transparency. Others called it judicial intimidation in digital form. Pam Bondi leaned over to Trump while watching a live segment on News Nation. The left's already mobilizing. OPDS, editorial boards. They're calling this a constitutional overreach, a dangerous precedent. Trump didn't blink. Let them scream, he said. They've had silence on their side for long enough. We didn't break the system. We broke the illusion. Weeks passed, but the fire didn't fade. Across the country, conversations had changed. In diners in Nebraska, in subways in New York, in classrooms in Montana, people weren't arguing about party lines. They were asking one question: who actually runs this country? At a charter school in Yuma, a student pointed to the board where a quote had been written in bold, black ink. Power without accountability is not justice. It's theft. His teacher looked up. Who said that? She asked. The class was quiet for a moment. Then a girl in the front raised her hand. Trump said it, in the court. But it didn't sound like they were quoting a man. It sounded like they were quoting a moment. In Wichita Falls, Texas, a civics teacher printed the full transcript of Trump's speech and had her class read it line by line. In Bakersfield, a retired factory worker called in to a local radio show. I'm not even a Trump guy, he said. But when he said they don't want a bench, they want a throne, I felt that in my bones. In Ohio, a rancher took a photo of the CourtLight map, glowing with red dots, and wrote, "These aren't just rulings. They're barriers." It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about Trump anymore. It was about visibility, about balance, about ownership. Across from the Resolute desk now hung a framed copy of the Declaration of Independence. Just beneath it, Trump had placed a plaque. It read, "We gave you trust, not immunity." In the Supreme Court building, no new statement came from Roberts. But the way the clerks moved had changed. The way the press watched the steps had changed. The illusion was gone. Pam Bondi entered the Oval that evening holding a stack of polling data. She didn't speak. She didn't have to. The look on her face said everything. Trump, still seated, barely glanced at the numbers. "You think this will last?" Carolyn asked him. He looked at the framed declaration. "Not unless we stay louder than the silence." And outside, America was louder. Not with riots, with realization. In homes, on screens, on sidewalks. From voices that had long been ignored, now rising. Not for a man, not for a moment, but for a principle. That democracy does not live in robes or in rulings. It lives in voices. Loud, imperfect, but free. The summit was over. But the course correction had just begun.